Today's episode is brought to you by 9centprinting.com. With over 100 five-star reviews, 9centprinting.com is ready to meet all your printing needs. Are you a church plant or small church with no copy machine? No problem. 9 Cent Printing has you covered. If you need bulletins, flyers, books, cards, offering envelopes, posters, they do it all. I know the Christian owners of this business personally, and I'm not just a fan, I'm also a customer. Fast, nationwide shipping, affordable, professional, wow printing at wow prices. Check them out at 9centprinting.com. Welcome to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. This podcast is a ministry of the Small Town Network. We exist to make disciples, train pastors, and plant churches in smaller communities. My name is Eric Nielsen, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Tony Colomb. How's it going, Tony?
Great, man. Just great.
Great to see you again. We just finished recording 2 episodes, so it's literally been like minutes since I've seen Tony.
Minutes.
And we are joined by my good friend, Will Ritter, who is at the Renew, what do you call it? Renew Church?
Renew. Yeah, Renew
Renew,
Churches.
at Renew.
Yeah, is our technical name.
Okay, in Jerome, Idaho. And Will and I have become friends. I think, are we friends? Are we still friends?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will is the only pastor friend I have that's not in the Restoration movement. Everyone's got to have a token like Calvinist friend, and you're mine. And so,
Token.
yeah, I need someone to keep me straight and challenge my theology. And we goof around and talk. And Will and I are both dreamers and schemers. And so when I get to go to his coffee shop / church plant, we just like nerd out on all kinds of stuff. It's really great to have you on today, Will. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it. So tell us about that kind of first episode, kind of talk deep dive into you. So tell us who you are. Who are you? Family, wife, whatever you want to include, in kind of a brief profile of who you are.
Yeah, sure. So born and raised in northern Nevada and moved up to Idaho so I could buy a deer tag over the counter and go to Boise State. And that's where I met my bride. I was not a follower of Jesus then, but my ex-girlfriend introduced me to Jesus, and so I married her. That's my tongue in cheek.
That was great.
So I became a follower of Jesus my sophomore year of college, and it's been a wild ride ever since. And so we were thoroughly Baptist until I saw the light and became Presbyterian. And anyway, so yeah, we were pretty active in churches as we were getting to know, like, personally, like what's it look like to be a follower of Jesus as an individual, but that transcends what's it look like to follow Jesus in oneness with your wife, and then what transcends even that is what does it look like to follow Jesus in covenant community with other disciples. And so that's been a really exciting progression. I started felt called to ministry back in 2000, I don't know, 8, 9, something like that. And so I had already got a degree from Boise State, and so I got online with Liberty Baptist Theological Seminary, and worked full time, having kids, getting married, staying married, and finishing up my master's degree, and eventually in that process really felt called to church planting. We had no idea what that was, and so every person with like this go to a land I will show you kind of thing. I don't know too many people that take that call and say, I'll wait for you, Lord. It's more of like, I got it. Thank you. I'll take care of this. And so I read a bunch of read a bunch of books about house churches, which are super sexy, and nothing ever goes wrong in a house church. According to all the books, like nobody provides undercooked chicken salad that gets everybody sick, right? And so that was our time in the desert where we were just kind of like wandering in the wilderness, and realizing after a while that we had kind of left the Lord in the dust, and started constructing our own vision of what church planting was going to look like.
Okay, hold off on that. So
Yeah.
that wasn't your, like, you're getting ready to talk about Renew, right?
Yeah.
So what wasn't your first ministry stop though? So like when you became a disciple of Jesus and you started pursuing, like ministry training and stuff like that, where was your first stop in like vocational ministry?
My first stop in vocational ministry was after the time in the desert, where a very healthy Presbyterian church here in my town. Um, we met each other because our boys were holding hands on the soccer field, and we thought they were Mormon because they had 4 kids, and they thought we were Mormon because we had 4 kids. Normal, normal, normal
Not,
rural Idaho kind of
well,
context,
wait a
you know.
second. Not all of our listeners are from Idaho, so you have to understand,
It's just
like
funny assumptions. I
in
love that part of the
Idaho,
story.
there are a
Yeah.
lot of Mormons.
So
And when you see big
so
families, you think Mormon in Idaho. Okay, that's our
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
that's our thought.
So anyway, we kind of started talking, and I heard he was a pastor, and we were told him that we were trying to plant churches, and they were very sorry. I'll let you edit this out.
And what
Okay. All right. So yeah, my we met each other on the soccer field, and kind of got talking. He was a pastor here in Jerome. I was wanting to plant churches. They were trying to start a contemporary church service, and I know how to play the guitar, and so he offered me a job. They asked us over for dinner, offered me a job, and I said no. Firm pass on that. I'm trying to get out of the box, and
Why'd
do
you say
house church.
no?
And he smirked at me because he's a smart guy, and then we connected a couple months
Yeah.
later, and had us over for dinner again, offered me a job again, and I said
Mm.
okay, and then I said okay, and realized then that the Lord was really pointing me in a direction where I needed to see what a healthy church looked like before He would entrust me with planting something.
Had
And so
you, let's dig in on that for a second.
yeah.
Did you feel like you hadn't seen or been part of a healthy church prior to that?
Not especially. So we were part of. We moved up to Kennewick, Washington. This is before my seminary and call to ministry, and we were part of a larger Baptist church up there with like 500 or 600 members. So you're just kind of you're in the machine at that point. You do your welcome classes and you do all that kind of stuff. But when we came back to Idaho, we ended up serving at a Disciples of Christ church that was pastored by a Southern Baptist, so it was a Southern Baptist church with a DOC label on it,
Okay.
and so we were serving in that church, and not especially healthy, but and sometimes church planters are motivated by that, right? Like, I'm gonna go plant the perfect church, and that's not a good footing to start from, because it's hard to plant something where your only vision is a dream of what could be, and no
Uh,
practical experience
yeah.
in facilitating healthy ministry. And so yeah, that's
So
I feel that God stuck me in there.
real quick on that. So it's also one thing to experience a good culture, healthy culture, and it's another thing to create it.
Oh,
And I think that's what a lot of planters they miss is that, oh, I know what a healthy church looks like. I've seen it. That's great, but do you know how to create it? That's a whole different ball game.
yeah.
So let's I don't want to overplay this, but I think it's important because you touched on something super important, yeah, as I think about planting and stuff. Tell us what made that church healthy. What you described it that way. So explain what it means that it's a healthy church. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, number one, love for one another. I don't think and nothing can happen if you don't love one another. It's the mark of being a disciple and of being in covenant community. And so when Carrie and I walked into that place for our first worship service, and it like saturated the air. It was almost supernatural in a sense of being
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, this is so weird and awesome at the same time. So you could just sense that, and that's the first time that meat was put on that bone of, and this is how they all know that you're my disciples, by how you love one another.
Hmm.
And so that was super encouraging. we had a high percentage of people engaged in the harvest or hungry to engage in the harvest. And that's, the reason I was hired to start a contemporary worship service, because whatever, who's not doing that? And then to teach people how to do outreach as a community, because evangelism is kind of my kick. And so being able to mobilize people to think outside of the box and how to reach your community was pretty awesome. And so our little tiny church in Jerome, Idaho, had a lot of national coverage within our local tribe, and big mega churches were learning how to do the outreaches that we were doing and executing them, and in Greenville, North Carolina, and Southern California, and all these kinds of things, because they saw a movement of people that got a taste of what it looks like to love your neighbor as yourself.
Wow, that's
Mm.
great. So let's talk about I want to kind of save the Renew story kind of for the second
Mhm.
half, but
Yeah.
can we talk more broadly? So what is the denomination that you're part of?
It's called the Covenant Order of Evangelical Presbyterians, or the acronym is ECO. That doesn't match, and there's a story behind that. But yeah, that's
I was gonna say it rolls right off the tongue.
I was
So
yeah,
like,
I know. That's the
yeah,
that's the tribe. That's the tribe we're a part of. It's
part
only
of me
been
wants to
around.
hear that story.
Yeah, I know. That's what
maybe we'll
happens
do
when
like
you
a
name your denomination
Yes,
and it's
I know,
failing to do a copyright search.
I know what I'll be doing this afternoon on the Google machine, you know.
Yeah. It's like, what the
maybe we
heck?
could do
Yeah.
like a bonus short where you tell the story,
Right,
according
right.
to
Well, and I only, I only got the half-inch deep story of that. I'm sure it's even funnier when you get into
yeah.
leadership's
So as
deals
a
with it.
guy that's the guy that's part of a non-denominational movement, and
Hmm.
we have to start organizations like Small Town Network to kind of champion church planting within our tribe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
who are more loosely affiliated.
Hmm.
Tell us what it's like behind the scenes for like a denomination to be into church planting. Is that something that like the organization decides on a like a high level, like that we want to get involved in that? Is it
Mm,
more like opportunistic, or there's this guy who's in our tribe who wants to do this? Is it
Hmm.
like a major thrust of your denomination, or is it
Yeah.
just something? It's like explain
Those
like
are
how it all works.
great questions there. So the our tribe is new in relative terms. So
mm.
we started in 2012, and I came on board as
Oh, wow.
the initial uh, the initial group of people ordained in the denomination. So I was like part of this first little shuffle of people ordained into ECO for the first time, and so with the new denomination, we still have very visionary people that are kind of leading the charge, and from the beginning, the focus has been on church planting,
Okay.
and so they worked really hard to kind of program that into the DNA of our movement.
Okay.
And so like we have a director of church planting who
Mm,
facilitates uh, church planting in all of our regions are called presbyteries in our tribe. And so in all of our presbyteries, they all have church planting, teams that are focused on helping identify planters, trying to figure out how to support planters, and whatnot. So like I was in a conversation with some of my leadership of my presbytery of the Northwest is what I'm involved in. And so I'm working with them to have some of their churches send prospective church planters to me for like an internship to do some training in what church planting could look like either in their context, or I steal them so that I can do more church planting in my
Yeah.
area. And so, but however, when you start something new, you're creating everything from scratch. And so Eco leaned heavily on the PCA. They have been really involved in church planting. Tim Keller's church planting movement has been really influential in the church planting world, for better or for worse. And so we've been able to model a bunch of our stuff off kind of what they're doing. But there's lots of sticks to trip on in this church planting pathway, and different contexts. Like, how do you do that at a national level and be able to shift with the context of all of the different churches within your denomination of over 400 churches. So yeah, there's
Wow.
lots of rubs there.
So in the kind of the genesis of this new tribe for you guys is then are you saying like church planting was like one of the main cornerstones of like why we're going to have our this new shift, this kind of branch started here?
Like, why was the denomination started? Is that kind of
Yeah, kind of like what were some of
oh
the key things for this? I mean, because in 2012, you're right, it's super
super
new.
yeah.
So kind of like it's always interesting to me to think we're gonna like start a whole new tribe. Why are we kind of like doing that? Why are we branching out?
Mm,
Was church
mm,
planting like one of those key reasons for that
mm, mm.
focus or?
No, this is a tribe that started off of the PCUSA, and so it's just kind of this predictable main lines swing hard into liberalism and soon into outside of orthodoxy. And so eco was uh, prompted by all sorts of contemporary issues where culture has saturated uh, church polity and theology and kind of corrupted it in a sense. And so eco is wanting to basically recapture our evangelical focus of being thoroughly orthodox and engaging culture, not getting in bed with it, if
So
that's
your
appropriate.
denomination got liberal and you started a new one, basically.
That's the trend, man. It happens in every main line, and so
Not all of our people, listeners know those big words. Including me, I don't know what polity means or stuff like
church
that.
governance or church governance. Even you guys have church governance.
We just say leadership. Yeah, very good. Okay, so I mean, that's kind of awesome, like to think about. I love the idea of a denomination starting with a focus on church planning. And while we're sitting here, I went to the website and it says like start a church, like right at the very top of the on the
Yeah,
menu.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, start a church. That's awesome. So very
Mm,
much at the forefront of like the movement that you became part of.
yeah,
Um, so some people that are listening won't understand this, but you like live in a small town. So your town is what, about 12,000 somewhere in there?
yeah. 12 to 13,000. Yeah,
So,
surrounding area about 25 to 30, but yeah.
so you're on staff
Mm,
at the Presbyterian church in town. And
mhm.
are they part of ECO?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in a small town, there's already one Presbyterian church. Was there any kind of like hesitation to go like, why do we need another church of the same tribe in the same town, or was it like totally like natural expression of like what you're doing to want to start another one right down the
Hmm.
street?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of hesitation, but I mean, it takes when you're going into an existing church and trying to build a church planting culture. I mean, that takes a long time. So I was on staff at First Press for 5 years, and
Okay,
the entire intent from the beginning was they agreed to help Carrie and I figure out how we're gonna plant a church. And so that was the upfront agreement. Like when they hired me to do worship, I told them if I'm still doing worship after a year, I'll quit. And so because I'm that driven and that sure of the call to go plant a church, even though I had no idea what that
right.
truly meant, and so I'm still new and learning kind of stuff. So no, the philosophy of church planting in my mind and in our mind at the time was that if you can have more than one Christian church in a town, then you can have more than one Presbyterian church. You can have more than one Restorationalist church. The
Right.
Mormons got three churches with like three wards in each one
I
in our town.
know.
And I think that's actually something that's an artificial barrier that I think we've constructed for ourselves,
Sure.
and one that
Mhm.
also is, like competition and tribalism and stuff like that, really pushes in to
Mhm.
that, making that untenable. But the idea is that you could plant a church 2 blocks away, call it something different, but because you have different leadership, a different pastor, a different vibe, a different culture, that it's gonna be just like if you were to plant in Jerome or I was
Right.
to go plant right alongside of another church. And so it really doesn't matter. But what that takes though, guys, is it takes sister churches that that can like, I don't know.
Pony up
It takes a lot of courage to do that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I see where you're going. I mean, all kidding aside, like it takes a lot of like partnerships with other congregations to see new ones get started. But they
Mhm.
have to also, what you're saying is they have to not see that as a threat. And unfortunately, every church plant I've ever started or been around, the planter always gets pushback from local people or people from the same tribe nearby. And there's this feeling of like a threat.
Mm,
Because I think we're so territorial, and I think a lot of churches are very in like very fragile situations where
mm,
if they lose people to the new cool church plant, they're going to go under. And that's a
mm,
fear, like an insecurity that a lot of pastors have, that like, man, that cool, like, coffee shop church is moving in down the street. All of our people are going to bounce and go over there.
yeah,
And usually that's not the case.
right,
When,
right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
The reason that they like the church they're at is because there's things about it that are attractive to them,
Yeah.
and they're not looking. They actually do have relationships. They do love each other, and they're not just looking for a bigger, better, cooler show. But man, tell a local pastor that when the church plant goes in down the street, and they're like, I don't know
Yeah.
about those people, and why are they doing this? And we don't need another church here, and all that kind of stuff.
It really it speaks to like a lot of what you harp on all the time, Eric. It's like we have a mentality of kingdom transfer or kingdom growth, like and trying to help promote that even in smaller communities with churches instead of viewing it as an opportunity to do for competition, but like we're even with some nuances and denominations, ultimately we're trying to get people into God's kingdom, So
Well, and
Yeah.
Will, not only did you get to see that in a positive way, it sounds like, you've also modeled that, because when I said, "Hey, our network's going to plant a church in Jerome," you've basically been like, "How can I help?"
mm,
You've opened up your building, you've met with our planter, you've been nothing but excited and encouraging as we talk about planting another church um, in your backyard, and you're like, you're a church planter and you're like, man, that's great. Let's get another one going. And I love the spirit of cooperation and that kingdom mindedness. We need more churches to think like that when it comes to the plants and stuff that are firing up in their backyard. So um, let me ask you one more thing, and then we'll just kind of wrap up this part. And then I really want to get into the
mm.
story of the renewed church slash coffee shop slash all that stuff. Because it's so cool, and I wish people could. I wish we were like filming there or something, and they could see it. It's just a neat space. So with the denomination and the church planning, is it? And this is me acting out of like complete ignorance. I have no idea how denominations work. I've never been in one.
Sure.
Is it more complicated? Like, what's the process of going from like, hey, there's a guy who wants to plant. What's the pathway? Just kind of, kind of condensed version. What's a
Mhm.
pathway for a guy in a denomination to start a new church? What has to happen for that to come into fruition?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. We know the value of assessment, and so you can't plant an eco church unless you've been assessed and greenlit for that.
Mhm.
And because that's just being responsible and setting, and I think that's showing care to the potential church planter and
Yeah.
making sure that, and I think the church needs to affirm that kind of a call. Again, that's part of being in community. And so we have, like my assessment though, it wasn't run through ECO because PCA has their own assessment process. And
Oh,
so we partner with PCA and they have a fantastic process. And so, you know, I'm assuming other church planning orgs, there's many different assessments out there, but there's the PCAs was super thorough, so like they're making sure I don't talk to doorknobs. They're making sure that my wife and I get along. There's, theology stuff, but it's open-handed theology because we're church planters and that's just kind of how we're wired in a sense, right?
Mm.
And and then I mean to the point of like when Carrie and I were trying to explain to them that we feel called to rural church planting, and they looked at us like we were crazy, right? Because that is so unsexy in the church planting world. Nobody's going to go plant a church in that sense, you know. But yeah, so there's financial help for church planters. There's places like me that really want to get interns involved and show them the different styles of church planting or possibilities that they're in. And so hope and some larger churches with resources will have like church planting residencies and things like that. And so there's that kind of support. Our director of church planting will, we'll go recruit at a exponential and things like that to try to
Okay.
find people with a passion for planting and try to link them up with a denomination like ours that really values church planting.
Okay. That's awesome. So some of that's similar. We obviously do assessments and all of our every Christian church restoration movement church planting org that I know absolutely does assessment and won't hire someone without an assessment. Um, and then like the residency, internship, all that kind of stuff. So, and I like what you said. I don't remember the words you said exactly, but essentially, like we really care about the people that we're sending out. We want them to not have a bad experience. We don't want them to fail. We want to make sure that they're ready and able to do the thing that they feel like they're inclined to want to do. And sometimes that's hard because, as you know, in assessments, and maybe some of our listeners aren't familiar with that process, but sometimes people say, I want to plant a church. They go to an assessment, and the assessment says no.
Yeah.
Um, and most of the people that hear no are crushed in the moment, but thankful later on. Later, when the emotion is taken out of it, when the people that just crush their dreams, when there's been some time that passed, they go, I'm so thankful we didn't try to do that. Because these assessment teams see things in people that they don't always see in themselves. So, Tony, have you had experience with that, with assessment?
Yeah, I was doing an internship down in New Orleans, and it was a church plant in New Orleans, 5 years old. To be on staff full time, you had to go through the Church Planter Assessment Center through Stadia. So I went to Johnson City and went through that, and it was interesting because I was a single guy, so I didn't have that dynamic of like the married couple part. But yeah, there were some people that were pretty broken about that. And there were some people that were kind of arrogant, going into it thinking they were like God's gift to the next new church plant, and they were humbled, and
Yeah,
it's definitely it was an intense weekend, an intense few days, but I think it was very valuable for me, even as a single young guy, freshly out of college, So I think it's an important step for sure.
that's cool. I didn't know that. So
Mhm.
my wife and I, quick story, our first church plant, we went to an assessment because we felt like God was nudging us that way, but we were hoping to get a no. Like I didn't want to be a church planner. I was hoping these people are gonna see right through me and go, this guy needs to get out of here. There's no way he's gonna plant a church. And like,
Mhm.
I just wanted to work at my existing church and never do anything else. I had no aspirations to be a church planner. I was reluctant. I didn't want to. We go to an assessment with, I think, two other couples who were gung ho and had all these plans and like the name picked out and the town and the whole, and everything. And we were just like, we're just here to see if God wants us to do this. Both those couples got turned down and we got passed.
Mm.
And I was
Wow.
like, dang it. Like I didn't want to pass assessment. And we're not supposed to say pass or fail. Recommendations. We got a recommendation to plan. So,
Yeah.
well, listen. Why don't we stop there? And I'm really excited. I'll tease it a little bit. We'll start at a church that's also a coffee shop. Is that the accurate way to say it, or a church that has? How do you verbalize it?
Let's see. How do Okay, my line has always been if Renew ever turns into a coffee shop, I'll close it. And so we're
Okay.
Mm.
first and foremost a front door to meet people, to learn their name, to share the gospel with them. And the org of a church is necessary because we call people into community, not just with their own little postmodern spiritual relationship with Jesus, but that we're very open-handed when it comes to connecting people in places that they might jive with a little better. So yeah, a church that is also a cafe, like a coffee shop.
Okay. And I've had their coffee and I've had their sandwiches and I've had company, good company there. It's a great place. You can check it out at renewchurches.com. Let me just go ahead and wrap up and then we'll log off here. Be sure and check out our sponsor, 9centprinting.com. If you like what we're doing, please like or subscribe. And if you're interested in Small Town Network, you can find us at smalltownnetwork.com. If you believe in the importance of planting disciple-making churches in smaller communities, we'd love to have you consider partnering with us in prayer and financial support. You've been listening to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by 9centprinting.com. With over 100 5-star reviews, 9centprinting.com is ready to meet all your printing needs. Are you a church plant or a small church with no copy machine? No problem. 9cent Printing has you covered. If you need bulletins, flyers, books, cards, offering envelopes, posters, they do it all. I know the Christian owners of this business personally, and I'm not just a fan, I'm also a customer. Fast, nationwide shipping, affordable, professional, wow printing at wow prices. Check them out at 9centprinting.com.